So the Epstein files came out and everybody's talking about them. But what also came out is Steve Bannon's interview with Jeffrey Epstein. I think it was conducted back in 2019 and it just came out and it's 2 hours long, or I think, let me see. Yup, almost 2 hours long, 1 hour and 57 minutes. And I did watch it and I found some really interesting clips of Epstein talking about money and talking about banking. And in this particular clip that I'm going to show you now, okay, let's forget all the stuff that Jeffrey Epstein had done and all the emails. I'm not going to go through that here. I'm going to focus specifically on some of his comments about money and economics and banking. And here in this particular clip, we're going to see what he has to say about inflation. So let's listen.
Yeah, in fact, it was funny because they were talking about inflation, and they were worried that what would happen. How do you control inflation? And as a mathematician, I didn't understand the concept. I don't understand the concept today. How's that possible? Well, when you talk about most things to do with money, money is meant to be local. It's U.S. dollars. Then I understand what it means. If inflation, it means my dollar today inflates and it doesn't buy as much as it did a couple of years ago. The prices go up. I don't have as, it seems that everything is great, but in fact my dollar is shrinking in value.
If you, and you're the financial genius here, I'm just like,
So as you can see, you can tell from the way he describes inflation that he doesn't really understand why it happens. And he's supposed to be this genius finance guy. And he doesn't even understand what is inflation or what is the cause of inflation. As you can see here, listen what he's gonna say. He says that the dollar inflates and therefore it buys me less, but he doesn't seem to understand what the word inflate comes from, or even inflation. Inflation comes from like the visual idea of inflating something. And that thing that we inflate, that makes money lose its purchasing power, is the money supply. So the money supply is small, and then we print a lot of money. We do a lot of money printing, and then the money supply inflates and it becomes bigger and it expands. So that's basically what inflation is. But you can see here from what Jeffrey Epstein is saying, he clearly doesn't understand what is inflation and he doesn't know how to explain it properly. So he just thinks that his dollar loses purchasing power for whatever reason. So he says as a mathematician he can't really understand, but it's quite simple. But the funny thing is that he also has another clip where he talks about fractional reserve banking. Let me play that clip so you can see what I'm talking about. It's here.
Fundamental part of money, which is called fractionalized banking.
And by the way, this is not a fundamental part of money. This is a fundamental part of modern banking. These two things are different. Banking is different from money. Okay, banking is a way of doing of operating your banking business, because so here he's going to talk about fractional reserve banking. There is also full reserve banking. So these are like two methods of conducting a banking business. It has nothing to do with money or the fundamentals of money.
And fractionalized banking is something that finance people understand, and the people on the street, and when I say people on the street, that's where I was when I started on Wall Street, would find it impossible to believe. Impossible. Why? Bannon Bank,
I'll be honest with you, I was also shocked when I first learned about fractional reserve banking. So let's listen what he's gonna say.
I give you $1, just one single dollar. In our system of banking, I would say, okay, Steve, I gave you $1. How much can you lend out to your friends? And your natural reaction would be probably something less than $1 because I want to keep something in my pocket. The way our system works is if you as a bank are holding my dollar, you can lend out an additional $8 or $9. No, it's impossible. I only have $1, Jeffrey. We have something called fractionalized reserves, which is if you have one, you can lend out 9. That's the way our system works. And so not only do world leaders not understand banking, but the man on the street, my father worked in the park department, it would be beyond his imagination that people could lend out more money than they actually had in their pocket.
Not necessarily. If I put $1 in the bank, you're not going to be able to lend out $9. Let me explain it in a different way. Say you are going to put $100 in the bank. So fractional reserve banking means the bank will only keep a fraction of your deposit in the reserve. Okay, so the bank has a reserve. You're gonna give them $100. They will keep a fraction of it, say 10%. Traditionally, it's been 10%. They will keep it in the reserve, and then they will lend out the 90%. So if you give them $100, they will keep $10 and they will lend out the $90 that is left. So that way, they are expanding the money supply. They are creating more money than there actually is in the reserves. So they lend out, for example, $10 to another guy. That guy puts it in the bank. Of course, the bank only keeps 10% of it and lends out the rest. And that's how $100 bill is going to expand into, I don't know, maybe 900 or $1,000 bills. Okay. So this is fractional reserve banking.
If the public understood that the bank really doesn't have their money at any one time, it's one of the things during the Depression, there were runs on the bank. The reason the banks don't keep much money in the actual bank is they assume that not everyone's going to want their money on the same day. So it's not really the fear of inflation. The fear is a run on the bank. Everybody wants to take out something that doesn't really exist.
Well, actually, both. Fear of inflation, that's what you, as the consumer, as the citizen, should be worried about. Of course, the banks, they don't worry about it because they can increase their salaries or whatever, and they are close to the money printer. As I've explained in my older videos, the Cantillon effect, the closer you are to the money printer, the less affected you are by inflation. In fact, you benefit from inflation. You benefit from money printing. So, I forgot what you were saying. I forgot what I wanted to say. Let me hear again.
Everybody wants to take out
Oh yeah,
something
run the
that doesn't really it's not really the fear of inflation. The fear is a run on the bank.
yeah, run on the bank. So basically a run on the bank is when everybody wants to withdraw their money, but they can't do it because if everybody goes and withdraw their money is not there because they only keep 10% and lend out the rest. And basically your money is not in the bank. As I've always been saying, people who say that Bitcoin is not real, well, your money is not real also. It's just a number on a screen. And you can't if everyone goes to the bank to withdraw their money, there's going to be a bank failure. And that's when the central bank actually steps in and gives liquidity to the commercial bank so they can give people these fake paper money to satisfy them so they would prevent collapse of the banking, of the entire banking system. And also, what he said here about fractional reserve banking goes back to inflation. So basically, he doesn't understand inflation and he doesn't understand, he actually understands fractional reserve banking, but he can't see the relation between the two. In a fractional reserve banking system, money is debt. In order to create money, you need to create debt. You need to issue new debt. And when you issue new debt, that debt comes with an interest that you have to pay. And if you want to pay the interest, so let's say, for example, I'm gonna issue I'm gonna loan you $100 bills, okay? And the interest is $10. Now you need to pay me $110, but I only created $100. Where are you gonna get the $10? Like the money supply now only has $100, but the interest payment is $10 more. So the interest payments will always exceed the money supply. So now if I want you to find some money, I have to create other money for other people. But even if I issue other money to other people, in other words, even if I issue more debt, that debt also comes with interest. And therefore the interest will always exceed the money supply. And if you want to pay the interest, you have to issue more money. In other words, more debt. So it's a perpetual cycle of debt issuance and currency debasement and inflation and money printing. That's how the system functions. That's why we say that Bitcoin has no top because the dollar has no bottom. They will always print more money. They will always create more money. And the so-called national debt, or the national debt that like Republicans and libertarians like to bark about, it can never be repaid. Full repayment of the debt is impossible, okay? Because the interest debt always exceeds the money supply. I actually wrote about this just moments ago on X. I wrote here, if money is created through debt and loans, and every loan requires repayment with interest, then total debt will always exceed total money supply. That's why total debt, or the national debt, can never be paid off. Only expanded through endless inflation, money printing, and currency debasement. And that's why Bitcoin. So as you can see, even Jeffrey Epstein, who we know he wasn't really a finance guy, he was a Mossad agent, he was working for a blackmail operation, blackmailing all these American politicians and powerful people in the United States. So even he doesn't really understand the financial system that much. And actually, there was another email that came out from the Epstein files, where it shows that Epstein tried to subvert Bitcoin in its early days, I think back in 2015, and he tried to fund Bitcoin Core. And now some idiots are trying to say that therefore Bitcoin is compromised and Bitcoin is goy gold and all this bullshit. But Bitcoin is open source. You can look up the code. Bitcoiners and node runners are not going to run the software if it has some backdoor, or if it has some loophole, if it has some how to say, some backdoor, basically. So all these claims about Bitcoin being subverted by Epstein, yes, Epstein tried to subvert Bitcoin, but that does not mean that he was successful, okay? It doesn't mean that he was successful. I'm looking for the post that I shared here where I talk about this. Here it is. So this guy says that Israel took control of Bitcoin by paying the salaries of 3 of the 5 key developers. This means that Israel can likely modify the code of Bitcoin to do something else, like getting alerts early or blocking a transaction, which is complete bullshit. Bitcoin is open source, everyone can check it right now and everyone can audit it, and there is no backdoor. So basically I write here, yup, Epstein tried to subvert Bitcoin unsuccessfully. Bitcoin's entire history is a constant struggle against subversive devs trying to change the protocol and turn it into another shitcoin. Thankfully, everything failed until today, but the struggle continues. Of course, now the struggle between Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Notes is still going on. The block size war was also going on in 2017, and all kinds of struggles within the Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a live organism. It grows and it becomes more robust and more anti-fragile as time goes by. And of course, there were many attempts by many people to subvert it, not just by Epstein. And so all these claims are complete and utter bullshit, and you shouldn't really take them seriously. So yeah, that's all I have to say in this video. Let me guys know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe to my channel. Follow me on X. I'm active more on X now. And see you in the next one. Take care.